Over the course of 720 days, Colin Angus rode, cycled, canoed, skied, and walked his way across 3 continents, 2 oceans, and 17 countries. His trip started in Vancouver with his partner, Tim Harvey, and they went to Alaska, across the Bering Sea, and into the cold, dark Siberian winter.
It's chilly and freezing. At
that point, Colin and Tim's friendship, already a little bit rocky, really soured. So Tim abandoned the trek, but Colin persevered. He kept going. Soon his fiancée, Julie Waffe, joined him, and they biked across Europe from Moscow to Portugal. Then they spent 5 months rowing across the Atlantic in their small 8-meter boat. They went through hurricane after hurricane, met a 7-meter, think of how big that is, 7-meter great white shark up close, almost got run over by a freighter.
That was like a foot away from us. I opened the door, and I looked inside, and I saw that all I saw was the side of the freighter.
And put their relationship to the ultimate test. Eventually, they made it to Costa Rica.
And behind me is land.
Where Julie set a record, the first woman to row across the Atlantic. And when all was said and done, they were back in Vancouver. How's this for a before and after? But for Colin and Julie, this wasn't just about breaking records. They had a much bigger goal in mind, to show the rest of us we can travel without polluting the planet. That is one serious hardcore trip, and here is the man who pulled it off. It's Colin Angus. Nice to see you. How are you?
Very nice to meet you.
Excellent. Let's look back at this picture for 1 second here of you. Can you see that dude with the beard? What do you think?
He looks like some big bad boy that my fiancée used to like, and now she's like, who's that geek I'm dating? But such is life.
She prefers that version of you, is that what you're saying?
Apparently, yes.
I know to ask you what was the trip like is a ridiculous question, but in a sense, I think there's an answer that I want out of this, which is to put yourself through that. Did you get out of it what you expected to get out of it?
Definitely. I mean, there's, of course, a few things you're looking for when you're on a trip like this. I mean, I think most importantly for myself is sort of the sense of getting to go out there and explore, get to see all these sort of beautiful and exotic parts of the planet, which you're never otherwise going to see. And having it interconnected sort of with a human-powered journey, you're just slowly moving through the land, and you're seeing the gradual changes. It doesn't come all of a sudden, and you're not missing any of it, because your eyes have to be open for the whole period of the journey. So whether you're going from a tropical jungle to a desert, you see that sort of change in the flora and the fauna and the people, the way they sort of live amongst the land. And of course, that's changing in itself. And for me, it was very rewarding just to get to meet all these different people around the world, whether you're in Russia or Central America or wherever it may be. You get to see a lot of different things. And so, yeah, upon finishing the journey, I really felt that there's sort of a mosaic of experiences, not just the wilderness, not just the oceans, not just the people, but all collectively. It was real eye-opening.
The trip started off differently than it ended for you, though, didn't it?
It did, and I mean, it changed in a lot of ways. Of course, my partners, I started out with a friend, and unfortunately our relationship began to sort of unfold on the journey, and so later on I joined up with my fiancée, Julie Waffe, and that was a very sort of significant change in the trip.
The planning of this trip with your partner, Tim, right? You planned this trip, and how long in before that broke down?
It was, distance-wise in the journey, is about a quarter into it. Time-wise, a little bit more, just because it was quite slow going through Siberia. And so basically, we'd made it right from Vancouver to sort of central Siberia when things really began to unravel. And it was, you know, Tim and I were, you know, we're friends in civilization, but unfortunately, you know, with a journey such as this, where you're with each other day after day, facing life and death decisions, you know, time after time, cracks can start to develop in the foundation of your relationship, and that happened.
Right? No, your fiance came out and joined you to do the rest of the trip with you.
That's right, and she joined me in Moscow, and we went together all the way back to Vancouver. So that was included cycling across Europe, and then, of course, rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, which is one of the biggest hurdles.
How did that test your relationship?
It was the ultimate test, and it was something which we were a little concerned about beforehand. I mean, we knew what happened with Tim. You know, Tim and I were friends before the trip, and after the trip, you know, unfortunately, it fell apart. And
you guys are like Biggie and Tupac now, man. Minus the shoot up the feud between you two is something.
There's, yeah, there have been a few issues. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, I think, you know, Tim has been sort of working quite hard to sort of undermine this expedition. He's been saying that, you know, what Colin has done is not a legitimate circumnavigation because he didn't cross the equator, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, we planned the trip together beforehand, and you know, we worked the route out together, and back then he was completely content with it.
But I want to go to the stuff I think people really care about as well, is the actual experiences on the ocean, the things that you would have, you were living off of fish, and then you, just a big tuna took your lure? Like, what happened?
Yeah, the fish for us was, I mean, it was pretty exciting out in the ocean, seeing all these different fish. And the neat thing is, with our boat, like, we were wondering, are we going to see any fish at all out in the middle of the Atlantic? And I think fish are actually attracted to the boat for various different reasons. Dorado, for example, they're like the fast-moving fish and very good eating. They instinctively apparently follow like driftwood or other bits and pieces in the ocean, so that's why they followed us. And then there's fish that follow other fish, like turtles or sharks, and they eat the sort of cast-offs. And so they were following us too, and we were feeding them little scraps and bits and pieces. And we were doing a lot of fishing to eat, eating almost exclusively Dorado. And we lost our second lure. We had, the first lure was all mangled. It was a hoochie with all these legs that were bitten off. So we couldn't use that anymore. And we had the second one, and a fish broke it off and took off into the distance. We were devastated because fishing was such a huge, it wasn't just a sport, it was sustaining us. It was a large part of our diet. And the fish that took it, he ended up going off into the distance, shaking his head and trying to shake the hook. And he spat the hook about 100 or 200 meters from the boat, and I jumped into the water and swam after where the lure had landed, and I found it and came back. So that was quite an exciting moment.
What happens to the weights? You must have weights on your line.
Yeah, there was a weight actually connected on the line, and when the line parted, the weight sank, and another fish grabbed that weight, totally unbeknownst to us, and we caught that same fish.
Wait a second. The weight sank, a fish ate the weights, you didn't even know that
we didn't even know. And this is actually while we were trying to catch the fish that took off with the lure. We thought, well, we'll try getting him in some way or another, and we'll try catching another fish, use him as bait. And that mangled lure that we put into retirement with the missing legs, we thought, well, we'll try dragging that back and forth. Maybe we can somehow lure him. And another fish bit it, and that was the one with the weights. When it was gutting it, the weight toppled out.
And it was your weight?
It was our weight, yeah. And so I'm looking at this weight going, what is this? Where did this come from? I forgot that there's even a weight on the line, actually, and then it's like, it dawned on me, to say, oh my God, this is our weight. So we got back the weight and the fishing lure.
God, man, it's a huge globe, but it's such a small world, man.
Yeah.
You see any shark fins?
We saw a couple of sharks. It was kind of unfortunate, really. You know, there aren't a lot of shark left in the ocean. One of the sharks that we did see was a great white, and that was pretty exciting.
Did you freak out at first?
You do feel a little nervous, you know, when you see this fin, just a big fin slicing through the water, going around the boat. And I'd been swimming just beforehand. I was scraping barnacles off the bottom of the boat, just underneath, scraping away. And you always do feel sort of nervous, you know, just feeling that sort of feeling of almost infinity, the depths beneath you. And all these little meaty bodies are being scraped off the boat, and I guess that's what kind of attracted it. Wow. So I was back in the boat, and suddenly this big fin started circling around, and then he stopped, went under, and came right underneath the boat. So that was quite.
Did you guys you obviously didn't have music with you. I mean, what did you do? How did you?
Well, we actually did have music. We had an iPod and a stereo system, which.
What did you power it off of?
Solar panels. So it was a pretty high-tech boat. I mean, the actual propulsion is very traditional. You're rowing, but you know, we do. I mean, even our water, for example, we can't carry enough water to cross the Atlantic Ocean. So instead, we've got a water maker which converts the salt water into fresh, and that works off the solar panels through a reverse osmosis desalinator. So.
Wow. What was the song that defined the trip? Like when you hear a song and go,
row, row, row your boat gently down the stream.
If you had that on your iPod, you made a bad decision.
You know, I was singing it all the time, and Julie hated me for it. Apparently, I'm a bad singer.
Really? Huh?
Yeah.
In the middle of the ocean, what's she going to do? Leave? She's stuck with it. Really nice to see you, man.
Very nice
Thanks for coming
see you, too. Thanks so much.
No problem, of course. Beyond the Horizon is the name of the book, Colin Angus. You got to check it out if you're